sneaking into their country without a passport and visa, that I didn't think that the sun would set that evening, that I didn't think I would see the sun set that evening. And I had convinced myself that whatever happened, I was not going to get out of this situation, and that it was a question of when, not if, they would execute me. So I decided from the beginning that because I wasn't going to get out, it didn't matter if I was nice to these people or nasty. The end result would be the same. So I decided to be the prisoner from hell. And for those 10 days, I spat at them, I swore at them, I threw things at them, I went on hunger strike, I was quite obnoxious. There would be so-called interrogations every day, and I would either not cooperate with the interrogations, or I would be, as I say, quite cheeky or rude in my answers. And in fact, when they did decide to release me 10 days later, the one time that we communicated, I would say, was when a religious terrorist came to see me and asked if I would like to convert to Islam. It was the one time when I thought, maybe I can get out here. And so I said, if you let me go, I promise I will read your Holy Quran and I will study Islam. I would have promised to have learned Swahili backwards if I thought it was going to get me out. And again, all the odds, even though the war had by this time started, they released me. My mother tells me that the day before I was released, she had about 20 members of the media in her front lounge when they were watching Sky News. And Mullah Zaid, the Taliban ambassador, based in Islamabad, made the announcement. And he said, we are going to release the English woman. She is a very bad woman with a very bad mouth. I must have said, what on earth did you say? I was so embarrassed. So, as a consequence, when they did release me, I don't know who was happier, me to get out of their grip, or them to see the back of me. In fact, I would imagine that some of them have still been counseled from the experience. And I would think that, unfortunately, whatever prejudices they held about Western women would have been reinforced tenfold after the experience that I had. But nevertheless, I did give an undertaking. And I tend to think if you give your word to do something, then you should do your best to fulfill that. And so I set about reading the Holy Quran. It was an academic exercise, the fulfillment of the promise, and really as a journalist covering the Middle East and Asia, it was shocking that I knew so little about the faith, which was clearly a way of life for a lot of people in the region that I was covering. So in order to write with any authority about the Middle East and Asia, I thought I really ought to read this book. And I was given an English translation by A.S.F. Ali, and there was an index in the back. And I thought, I'm going to make this easy, and I want to find out about all these feminist issues. I've been a promoter of women's rights all my life. I'm one of 3 daughters, born in a mining village in County Durham, and as a woman, growing up as a young woman there, I learned that you really have to fight for equality. So I started looking through the index, trying to find a chapter on how to beat your wife, how to abuse women, how to stop them from being educated, any of this. But what I did find was texts that made it abundantly clear that women are equal in spirituality, work, and education. And I began reading supplementary literature to find out a little more about this. I found it very easy, by the way, to read the text of the Quran because I was, at that time, a Christian, a practicing Christian. I would go to church maybe twice a month, which is bordering on fanaticism in Britain. And I was, as a former Sunday school teacher, I was delighted to see that a lot of the characters that I read about in the Bible were there in the Holy Quran. So it was very easy for me. It was like reading a newer, more updated version of a classic, and so I found it quite easy to read. And then I went back and read the Bible, and went back and read the Quran again. This took a period of time. It wasn't done in a matter of weeks or months. It took more than 2 years. And I also spoke to various people in the church because I began to question more. And I also spoke to a whole wide range of people in the Muslim world. And I began to realize that there was a difference. The Bible is a beautiful compendium of stories written by men of God. And there are quite a few different versions, but essentially the message is the same. Whereas the Quran, there is only one version. And as Muslims, we consider it to be the Word of God, which is why I discovered Muslims get so agitated when people try and meddle with the text, because essentially what you're trying to meddle with is the Word of God. And there isn't a Muslim I know who would be reckless enough to challenge that. So that's why I began to understand that Muslims get quite agitated when you try and mess with their book. As I said before, I'm a promoter of women's rights, and not far from where my parents' home is the grave of a famous suffragette, Emily Davidson, who martyred herself by throwing herself under the King's Horse during a race in 1913 so that women could get the vote. And that was less than 100 years ago that she